Everybody has different ideas about what constitutes the perfect ride, the perfect adventure, and the perfect scenery. Well, today I'm talking about my 3 favorite places to ride for spring, summer, and winter so far, but that doesn't mean they're the only places to ride. You might be asking yourself, why not a good place for fall? Well, because any one of these places is really good in the fall. So before we get going, go ahead and pause this video, then take a minute to write your 3 favorite riding areas in the comments below to help other riders get a good grasp of what's available in your area. And maybe you'll meet some local riding buddies in the process. My idea of the perfect ride is relatively close to me, preferably within a day's ride, with amazing scenery, varied riding terrain, good seasonal weather, and a chance of adventure in the forecast. I've been called out lately because many of my rides and footage in recent videos have been located in just 3 areas, many times on the same trails, even with the same reused footage, but if we're judging by scenery alone, can you really blame me? Now, most of us have limited money and all of us have limited time, so we want to get the most value when we plan our riding trip. So why keep going back to the same old places then? Well, it's the same thing with restaurants. In your town, there are dozens of places to eat, some good, some not so good, some terrible. Sometimes you feel adventurous and you try something new and it can be the best food you've ever had, or the opposite can be true and you end up involuntarily camping in the bathroom for the night. Riding is the same way, and my favorite riding restaurants are Moab on the eastern border of Utah, the Alpine Loop in southwestern Colorado, and the lesser-known little family buffet right here in my backyard of southwest Utah, St. George. These are 3 places where I know it's going to be amazing and I'll get my time and money's worth every time. Occasionally I'll try new trails, but the house favorites are always worth ordering, especially when bringing my friends for the first time. In the springtime, Moab is like a fine resort restaurant. It has some of the best courses in the world, and nearly everything on the menu is made to perfection. There are legendary trails for big bikes and incredible technical riding for the dirt bike types. For us dual sport guys, that means perfection. The scenery in the surrounding area is world class, but that doesn't come without a price. On the downside, Moab is expensive. It's remote, and it's often crowded, more often than not by people who want it to be closed to everybody but their own kind. The town itself is an odd mix between a slummy county fair and an upscale film festival, usually with film festival prices and county fair amenities. Even with all its flaws though, if you have some time off in the spring, it is worth a trip. Slick Rock, Cane Creek, and the Potash Road trails in particular are some of the best trails I've ever ridden. And if you can get in, take the White Rim Trail. It is breathtaking. For summer riding, the Alpine Loop in Colorado is like a good steakhouse. You know what you're going to get here, even if you try different things on the menu. Epic alpine vistas, jagged peaks, stunning forest trails, and a side of fascinating mining history. It's basic meat and potatoes of adventure riding, and that's a good thing. The problem lies in the fact that it's only open for a few months of the year and everybody knows it, so it's monstrously overcrowded. When you get away from the crowds, you'll be enjoying some of the best ADV filet ever. If you time it wrong, then it's almost like some guy on four wheels is reaching over your shoulder to take bites of your succulent steak while you cut it. I've learned to stay away from the well-known trails and passes, especially on weekends or holidays. Every time I've tried some lesser traveled offshoot or basin or gulch from the Alpine Loop menu, I've been pleasantly surprised. They're not as grand as the passes, and many of them are out and back instead of a connecting trail, but going up a gulch and down again are like two different rides. So the Alpine Loop really does have a secret menu that is more than worth it to check out and explore, and even if the weather goes bad, it's still fantastic fun.
Are you kidding me?
And for great winter riding, when most of the northern hemisphere is covered in ice and snow, there's the lesser-known Family Buffet of St. George, Utah, where I live. It's not a tourist trap necessarily, but it still gets its share of snowbirds. And it's not a small town like Ouray, Telluride, or Moab. We've got a little less than 200,000 people here, so while it's not enormous, it's got all the amenities, including a Rocky Mountain ATV MC outlet, and there are plenty of reasonably priced hotels, tons of wide open and free camping, and some excellent food. It's never crowded on the trails, and the riding variety is heavenly. Scenery-wise, the trails in St. George aren't as mind-blowing as the classy dishes in Ouray or Moab, but everybody from big adventure machines to road bikers to dirt bikers can get what they want and end up satisfied. And yeah, it may not be miles of slick rock, incredible peak vistas, or the White Rim Trail, but there's still plenty of sandstone, a good helping of scenery, and the back roads through the Mojave Transitional Zone, 4 beautiful state parks, and Zion National Park aren't exactly chopped liver. One of my favorite things about St. George's laid-back buffet of trails is the lack of structure. Often people come to St. George looking for a specific trail, maybe one that they've seen in one of my videos, and they say, I want to ride the Death Star Trench. And I say, which one? St. George is a place where you can put away the maps, forget the trail names because they don't really exist, and go get lost. In fact, that's exactly what I recommend people do when they get here, even if I ride along with them. I rarely guide rides. Instead, I let people who are new to the area explore for themselves, taking the trails that excite them the most. It's during these times that I almost always find new trails that I wouldn't have found without following somebody unfamiliar to the area. More often than not, I tell groups and even individuals to go out, get lost, and explore whatever looks fun to them. Inevitably, they leave and go explore with a bitter taste in their mouth because I'm not there to guide them. But every single time, they've come back and they've had an incredible day of adventure. If you send a message asking about the best trails in St. George, the answer from me will always be the same. Go out, get lost, ride what looks fun to you, have an amazing time. There are no bad trails or wrong turns here in St. George. So please don't hold it against me if I don't reveal the St. George secrets. If I told you exactly how to get from A to Z, you might miss all the other letters in between. And I'm sorry, but I don't give out GPS tracks either. I used to, but the pristine single-track trails that I shared got shared and shared again. and in a matter of just a few years, those glorious single tracks have been utterly destroyed by side-by-sides and are now the width of a 3-lane highway. And while it's overwhelmingly desert, the terrain varies from plains to trenches to canyons to plateaus to mountains. If you're lucky, you'll find a hidden desert spring at the bottom of an insane slot canyon, and there are a few of them out there and probably a dozen more that I haven't found yet. The best part is that you can ride all day and never see another soul. Riding is wide open and you can generally go wherever you want, although some areas are closed for historical and environmental protection, and I'd stick to trails and washes. Even though it's not regulated and it's doubtful that you'd ever get caught if it were, I would try my best to stick to the established trails and tracks. Now the downside is that at this buffet, the air conditioner is broken for most of June, July, August, and September, so midday temperatures are often triple digits. However, in the winter months when most other riding restaurants are closed, St. George is still open and still awesome. So while these are my 3 tried and true, guaranteed to be great riding areas, I'm excited for the day when I find a new favorite riding restaurant. Moab and the San Juans are getting a little too overcrowded for me, and while I love St. George, I do long for a little more green on the plate. So if you haven't already, go ahead and leave a comment below of your favorite riding areas. A gigantic thanks to my patrons and producers for making unsponsored, from the heart cinematic videos like this possible, and remember, whether you're dying to see the majestic peaks of the San Juans, the wide-open Badlands of St. George, the towering hoodoos of Moab, or the best trails and rides in your own backyard, you can do this. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching. Much love, eveRide out.